So please let me know once you're able to see my screen.
Yes, we can.
Perfect. So today's presentation is about zero trust because it's become one of the cybersecurity latest buzzwords. And that's when we started talking about it. And it's not a new word. It's been there for quite some time. I would say 7, 8 years or even more. But people have started talking about it now. If we go to LinkedIn, Twitter, anywhere, any social media, people are talking about that we should have zero trust, why we didn't have zero trust. So before we dive into the presentation, let me tell you about bit about myself. My day job is with IBM India Software Labs as a security solutions architect, wherein I work with the products teams on the security for IBM security portfolio. Apart from that, I'm quite passionate about the community and try to spend quite lot of my free time with building the community and interacting with the members. So at OWASP, I am one of the global board members. I would say global board of directors. That's the right position. And also one of the chapter leaders for OWASP Bangalore. Apart from that, I run quite a few communities like InfoSec Girls, WooSec, and part of IBM Women in Security. And this presentation is wholly and solely my views about zero trust and not my employers. So, have you seen this picture? Or if you've not seen it, it's more of a castle wherein it's being protected by certain guards. So, it's called a traditional model. And why I'm trying to build it with the security or trying to map it with security, because we always assumed in our current model or even the previous model, we say that because the models have matured over the period of time. So we always assume that good guys are inside the firewall and bad guys are outside. So anything is inside, any user that's part of the organization is a good person. And outside, oh no, that person is a malicious user. But what was the problem with this kind of approach and why we started changing all of it? Because this approach actually lacked depth and breadth that we needed, especially the time when we are changing, we are moving our applications to the digital world. We have started using phones, we have started using all the applications on phones. So there has to be change in the roles, responsibilities, kind of models that we already had, and we have seen that the breach keeps coming in. This might seem a bit familiar, wherein we used to create the network diagram, segregate between different networks, different zones. So under this particular trust model, it was assumed that a user's identity is never compromised, and then all the users we trusted or supposed are supposed to act responsibly. So if I am a organization user, they will always think that I am a responsible user. And we have seen that this model continues to be abused. With 80% of the today's data breaches are caused by misuse of privileged credentials. If we look at the stats, the numbers actually shows it all. Traditional network architectures break network or network zones into different zones, like contained by one or more firewall. We had untrusted zone or internal zone or external zone. So we were all talking about zones. Now, through this model, protection is given by building multiple lines of defenses, or we talk about defense in depth, that attackers must go past before eventually gaining access, while possible insider threats are not taken into account. So, if you talk about breaches which have happened in the past few years, they're mostly done by the internal people, which will never taken into account in such kind of model. I can be an admin and I can have access to everything. And if I leave my organization, that means I can do anything and everything if my access is not disabled. And I've seen cases where access is not being disabled. Nobody actually bothered to take care of that. Now, question clients, because everything is dependent on client, server, and network. Can we trust a client? No, we can't trust a client. That's why we are here and talking about new things. Can we trust a server? No, we can't, because servers have also been breached over the years, whatever we did. And similarly, network. Can we trust? No, we can't trust any of that. Now, if we can't trust any of that, what can we do? Simply don't trust. Is it so easy? Or if we trust, then verify. It's like trust but verify. Does it seem so nice? Or we might be living on this kind of algorithm, or this kind of environment wherein we have to trust but verify. So if now by now zero trust might sound little bit familiar to you, it's because many of us have seen it before or have heard of it before, or even when we started off this presentation we started talking about it. So when it all started with the access control list. We started implemented access control list, then we started with role based access control, and then we moved to principles of least privilege, and now we are talking about zero trust model. But why aren't we talking about role based access controls or the previous models? Because the problem with the role based access control, or even subsequently with just using least privilege, was that it allowed only subjects to be assigned multiple roles and privileges. So if I'm trying to, so subjects and objects point comes into picture where I am a user and I'm trying to access something. So that something could be a database or anything. So that will be an object and I would be a subject. So I would be granted anything and like any access from anywhere, which actually eventually over the years loosened to a point wherein it defeated the purpose which it was meant for. So if I leave the team and I move to other team, I might be carrying those privileges. And think about, if I am into order management process, I have placed an order. Am I supposed to approve it? Or if I have requested for an access, can I approve it? If I approve it, that means I'm the whole and sole owner. I can do anything and everything. So what does zero trust model says? Zero trust says to trust no one, not even the users behind the firewall. And there have been a lot of misconceptions, myths about it, which we will be talking about while we are moving ahead with the session. So this is the actual mantra which zero trust talks about. So in short, zero trust flips the mantra from trust but verify into verify and never trust. Yes, these words we would be using continuously in this particular session: trust or never trust. All these words. And many security professionals have been talking about it, have been working on it, and they just did not know that this is how we have to stitch together, and we would be attaining it at certain point of time. And we are all talking about zero trust, so let's go ahead and deep dive into it, that how it all started. So the concept of zero trust has been around since there's a person called John Kinderberg. He was at Forrester and he coined the term the zero trust in 2010. An year later, a company named Google, if someone of like if any of us don't know, we can Google about it. So rolled out Beyond Corp. So, what was it? It's a zero trust access approach that assigned rules and policies to workloads, virtual machines, or network connections, and then only allowed necessary actions and connections in the workload. It was it was almost the similar way, but Google implemented specifically for their employees. And fast forward 10 years, we have like almost 100,000 people who are using this particular model. And it's not about making a system trusted, but instead about eliminating the trust. And zero trust model recognizes the trust as a vulnerability, which keeps getting abused. Trust is always being abused. On So once on the network, users, including threat actors and malicious insiders, are free to move inside, they can be detected. And later on in 2017, Gartner also came up with another model called Kata. Now, we've talked about zero trust, we have heard the history, but why do we want to attain it? That's the basic question. So, 6 trillion. That seems to be a huge number, but that's the cyber crime cost, which has increased from trillion from 2015, and it's going to be this in 2021, and that's actually a prediction by cybersecurity venture. So in just like 5 6 years, The number has doubled, and over the years it's going to double. And we have seen the greatest and latest breaches of all times in past few years. Now, what's the average cost of a data breach? This is the average cost of a data breach, which seems to be really, really high. And if we don't control in time, it'll keep increasing. And as I mentioned earlier, that 80% of the data breaches happen because of privilege access abuse. It's the research done by Forrester Estimates, and you can actually look at the internet. All the references I've given at the end of the presentation, which you can take a look at. These figures actually come despite organizations spending so much of money on SIM tools, access management, talk about data security tools, mobile device management, and so much more. And still we see all of it. Now, when we have seen all of it, can we say identity is the new perimeter? Could be, could be. But we need to still explore more to get it to that point that we can say that identity is the new security perimeter. And as we are moving more and more or moving towards the hybrid and multi cloud environment, this is actually ringing the bell. The days are gone wherein we talked about centralized kind of environments based on like known computers, known network, and they are connected to the whole known people. Now we are all talking about decentralization. So let's talk about the architecture. And when we talk about architecture, they specifically say a security perimeter is a thing of the past. We cannot talk about it because in cloud, how would you define the perimeter? The person gets in from the first thing comes it is the login page when we talk about a cloud. So companies are instead adopting what many in the industry call as a zero trust model or a zero trust security model. And enterprises have started to think or assume that the environment is going to be hostile if we're moving to cloud or if we have anything which is open to the internet. So this is the architecture which I picked up from O'Reilly, and what it says is the supporting system in the whole environment when we talk about zero trust is called the control plane. And every component, if we talk about every other component, that is called a data plane, which is being coordinated and configured by the control plane. So this is a control plane, and everything is the data plane, and control plane is managing that. So we first identify a protect surface. Now, what is a protect surface? So protect surface is made up of known or most critical and valuable data, assets, applications, and servers. Because a lot of organizations don't know what are their critical servers. I have heard a lot. I've seen a lot. So if we don't know what are our valuable data, what's our valuable data or assets or even applications, if there's a crown jewel and if we don't know about it, and if something happens, what are we going to do about it? We cannot do anything. So first we need to understand what's that, what's our protect surface, because it cannot be similar for any organization because every organization is different. There are small organization, bigger organization, they have their own convention that this is my crown jewel and I'm going to be taking care of it in such a way. So we need to have a proper CMDB wherein we are listing out everything. And once we have identified that, we can identify how the traffic moves across the organization, understanding who the users are, which applications they're trying to use, and how they are connecting or how they are trying to access the whole network or the data. And once we have that understanding and interdependencies between the data, assets, applications, and services, we should put controls in place as close to the protect surface as possible, creating a microperimeter around it. Think about when we are creating a LAN or the whole network and we are giving slash 24. Why do we need to give slash 24? It'll be hard to manage. How about giving slash 30? Which will be a little shorter network and it'll be easy to manage, and we will be able to check the activities which will be floating around. So we can create a microperimeter by deploying a segmentation gateway, or most more commonly known as next generation firewalls. So we can do that, and we would be able to get to know that what is the loud traffic or legitimate application that have actually access to the whole network or even to the protect surface. And The segmentation gateway, when we are talking about it, it actually can provide us with the granular visibility into the traffic, which can be really really useful for us to get to know if someone is trying to manipulate the whole network. And once we have built our zero trust policy around the protect surface with different segments, and understand defining that yes, this has to be secured this way, this has to be secured this way, it'll be really easy for us. Earlier there were multiple layers, but if an attacker comes in bypassing each layer, that person can do so much harm to an organization, and we have seen it. So it'll be easy for us to monitor and maintain in real time, looking for things like what should be included in the protect surface interdependencies. Now, with zero trust we can gain visibility and context of all the traffic across the users, devices, locations, and applications. Plus, we have zoning capabilities and much more to it. So let's talk about a little more on that. So, when we talk about zero trust approach, we can leverage to identify our business processes, users, data flows, and the associated risks around it. We can set policy rules, and that can be updated automatically because we will have a full view of our network. So zero trust architecture changes access control from the corporate network perimeter to individual devices and users called endpoints. A business can have this best security measure to guard the network against outside people, but if an attacker or a malicious user has to enter the corporate network, there can be many techniques that we have seen. That's how the attackers are like most creative people around in the world. So this is what we have picked up from the Forrester research, and this can define that what can be part of the whole data plane or the protect surface, wherein we talk about people, devices, network, workloads, automation, giving the holistic view of everything that's inside the network. Now I'm going to talk a little bit towards what can be done, what all points we can consider. We can conceptualize that. So let's start with least privilege. Principles of least privilege we have heard, we have visualized, we have used it. How about enabling the right users to have the right access to the right data for the right reason and to the right location? If we have everything right, like only this person is allowed to have access to this particular network or this particular data, and as soon as this person leaves, okay, let's remove the access, and this person is not allowed to manage here and there. And let's say I am a SOC analyst and I can create rules on SIM tool, or I can delete rules or an SIM tool. How good or bad would it be? I am a developer and I have access to the production environment. What can go wrong? There can be many things around it. Just food for thought. So, we have to be very cautious about it. Let's enable users to have the right access with the right data for the right reason from the right location. Let's keep this as a mantra. The another point comes in. Now we are doing it. How about legacy apps? Every organization which is there for quite some time, they have legacy apps, and they are running or they should be running in the virtualized environment. Or if we are trying to containerize it, is it so easy? No, they are not so easy. But we have to make sure that we are doing something around it. We are something around infrastructure, whether on premise servers, cloud based VMs, containers, or microservices. Now, we all are talking about microservices. So, exposing internet, like internal applications and infrastructure to the internet, does that make them vulnerable? Yes, that makes them vulnerable to many kind of attacks like DDoS, distributed denial of service, SQL injection, and many other application layer attacks. And all the attackers are becoming more and more craftier. That's why we as a security researcher have to be like even more craftier. And that's when we are trying to build communities, trying to learn from the people around us. So, what are they trying to do? They are actually trying to use the ever evolving techniques to scan the enterprise. and understanding what kind of vulnerabilities can there be. If there is an open S3 bucket and I get to know about it, what I'm going to do is I'm going to download the data and play around with it. So why to give them a chance? There are a lot of scraper tools which they can use and play around with it. So if we start isolating the network infra, like, okay, this is the person who's supposed to manage this particular network, and only these many people should have access to it, who's actually working on it, will make a lot of sense. So enterprise must isolate all the applications and even the access architecture from the public infrastructure or public internet. So it cannot be targeted by the malicious actors using open listening ports, because there have been chances wherein there are open ports have been there and people have taken the advantage of it, misused it. So if cyber criminals can't find the network or determine which applications and services the target device is running, can they do something? It'll be very difficult for them to portray an attack. If I know that your application is running on Apache server, I am going to craft an attack just that way and I'm going to bombard it. So, what can we do? We need to make sure that we don't trust our internal employees. Yes, I said it right. We shouldn't be just trusting our employees blindly. Malicious actors, they specifically target now, like we all are on LinkedIn, we all are on Twitter. LinkedIn has all our details. And if I am trying to do a social engineering attack on someone, I will try and find out what could there be email address. If I work for IBM, my email address could be my first name dot last name at ibm.com or anything. I can just try and figure out, or abhinav.sitesh or at OWASP.org. That could be the case. So I'll be more craftier and trying to understand what all details I can get. Social media is like one place wherein you can get anything. You Google the person and you'll be able to find the details about the person. So we are trying to fell prey ourselves, and individuals who are working for an organization, it's so easy to get their details. And what the malicious user are trying is they're targeting specific users with desirable seniority, skill sets, access level, and boom, launch the specific attacks on them. And if a user machines gets compromised, it is often referred to as zombie. A zombie is a slave or a slave machine, we can say that, in a network. And the person whose machine is compromised in the internal network, that person would not even be getting to know, because that machine is acting as a zombie, and that machine will be executing attacks on the corporate applications or even somewhere else. So if an internal employee or an internal machine is trying to pause an attack, people might not even get to know. And we are talking about WAFs, like web application firewalls, to protect the external facing application from such attacks. But many haven't extended this protection to the corporate applications which are inside the network. So, how would we get to know that there's something which is happening inside the network? And WAF can actually protect internal applications as well, and the data behind the application layer, and like injection, SQL injection, or malicious file execution, even for that matter, cross site request forgery. And in that scenario, if we think about, either one of our employees could be an attacker, or one of the employee account access might be compromised. If we go with these mantra, we can save a lot. Now, every one of us has mobile devices and we access our emails via our phones. So we know that organizations have allowed us to use our mobile devices and we are sitting at home. So, in some way, if you don't have your office system, you're trying to do your office work with your personal device. I've seen people doing it. Not everyone is in IT and not everyone has the access to the corporate machines. So, it's very, very hard. And mobile devices, it can be tablet, it can be laptop, it can be anything. And usage is only increasing, which is causing a massive challenge for the IT departments. Now, besides user and accounts, every device is owned by the organization or me. And that's when we enable BYOD, bring your own device. So zero trust systems have to monitor what devices are trying to access the network and make sure that every single one of them is authorized. If any of my system is there, that has to be authorized properly. Without being authorization done, nobody should enter my organization, even the person who is part of my organization. This practice will further minimize the attack surface for our own network because we know that we are only allowing the people who should have access. And especially if you enable MFA, cherry on top of a cake. So, with zero trust architectures, all the connections should require plain authentication. And not just that, at the same time, how about authentication with a stronger than just username and password, like multi factor authentication, which is like core value for the zero trust? And how about enabling single sign ons? Apart from that, how about federated applications? This can be like the more different zone for us. I've seen still people that they don't use multi-factor authentication. There's so much education going on that why should we be using multi-factor authentication? It's for our own good. Like if I am active on Twitter and I'm not using multi-factor authentication, what could go wrong? If someone has my password, they just log into my account and start posting anything and everything, and all the people will start looking at it. So identity and access management help by simplifying access and making sure that our users are secure. And users only need to remember one password if the identity of the end user accessing is known, and single sign on is provided. So single sign on plays a really big role in that. And with the number of business apps ballooning around, employees must remember, and there is a number of credentials and businesses need better ways to manage access. If we have a lot of passwords, it'll take so much more time. And if we still have multiple password, like I have like tons of passwords, so I use a vault to manage those passwords, and my vault itself is being protected by a multi-factor authentication. So can we do that? And there's another thing that I recently came across: just in time access, which is like amazing mantra. And just enough access, like only like for a specific period of time you need access, you'll be only allowed to have access during that time, even for a lambda function or for any automated function. And after 6 hours or like that particular time, that will be removed automatically, and you don't have to worry about it. So even if you need limited amount of access, you will be only given that particular access. And it's so much amazing with the adaptive access, which is like combined with all the AI features and whatnot. Now, when we say provide applications only access to the users which don't have a network access, if we compare and contrast with the conventional environments like Citrix, we used to access like our applications with the help of Citrix, and people started attacking Citrix itself. Now we all are using applications which are web based. Now, if we expose any of the port, people will start, or malicious actors will start attacking that particular port, and that's like the go-to place for them to get the access. So how about creating the authentication in such a way that if I am I am a normal user, I only have limited access. I'm only allowed to do certain tasks. Even if someone gets my credentials or something goes wrong, they don't have access to anything and everything. And zero trust is never dependent on a location, user, device, and application workload. And it's everywhere. Because this is the question which I came across last time, where is it dependent on a location? Is it dependent on just users? It is just dependent on UI devices, or what it is. So we cannot enforce zero trust in one location. It must be proliferate across the entire environment. The right users need to have access to the right applications and data. And application only permissions improve the governance in the environment, which is so much needed. It provides the visibility, insight into who's accessing what application, where the data is going, and how it is being accessed. Verify all the sessions. Can we do end to end encryption? Yes. Talk about cloud, data at rest, motion, everywhere. It can be encrypted. Now, can we do this? Yes, we can categorize the data. The kind of data that we have, if we categorize it properly, what's internal, what's external, what can be kept like away from anyone and everyone, only these people will have access to it. Come what may, nobody will be allowed access to it. So that's going to make a lot of difference when we are specifying it properly. Now, when we talk about advanced threat protection, we've seen that there are a lot of threat actors which play a role here. So how can we deal with it? Let's get the feeds. Who is trying to target what organization? Because threat feeds give you a view on the email servers which are trying to access certain environments, certain organization, even for that matter, certain business unit like healthcare, financial, because there are certain attacks which are targeted especially for banking and finance. Like those are called banking and finance malwares. So if we get the right set of threat intel and we move around it, we actually act upon it, it's going to change our environment, threat landscape, because we know this is how the attacks are progressing. I'll give you an example. If you've heard about WannaCry, it came up, everybody started talking about it, and trust me, we had like sleepless nights at that time because we were not sure what was our environment, and we had to scan the whole environment. Even though we had scanned it earlier, we still thought, okay, let's do it for the better. But if we have it in a proper way, we know that this kind of things are coming up, we are updating our patches properly, it's going to only strengthen our network. And if I'm confident that my devices are secure up to a certain degree, I can remove my trust from the network. And despite the wide variety of or wide adoption of layered security, malicious actors are still gaining access to the enterprises by exploiting the security weaknesses. Even with firewalls, security web gateways, sandboxes, intrusion prevention systems, endpoints, antivirus, businesses are still exposed and falling victim to phishing attacks, zero-day malwares, and not just that, DNS-based data exfiltration, and so much more. So it's actually the need of the hour, we are where we actually do not automatically trust any environment between the devices and the services it is actually trying to access. So even your local network devices should be configured to prevent DNS spoofing, man in the middle attacks, and unsolicited inbound connections as well. So can we track anything and everything? Anything goes out should be tracked. Anything comes in should be tracked. As such, organizations need to commit to auditing and confirming or making sure that all the activity, not blindly allowing it. We have to track it. And to do so, we need to require, or we what we need is we require visibility in what's happening on their network or in our network, what's happening. And if we don't know, we can't trace it out. With enterprising, like all the enterprises are like huge, or even the startups, they have huge amount of data coming in and going out. If I am a B2B site or if I am a retail site, I have like huge amount of data. So what should I do? We should monitor and verify that all the DNS requests from the devices both on and off the network, whether originating from laptops, mobile phones, desktops, tablets, guest Wi-Fi's, or even IoT devices, to ensure that inquiries or queries are not headed for malicious or unacceptable sites. If there's something that we see, let's raise an alarm and find out who did, what happened, where it's going. If it's making any command and control connection, or there's a connection which is they should not be making and still happening. So we need to make sure that we as an organization are examining the traffic, and the behavior of that traffic. If there's a spike at certain time, why that spike is happening. View into the global traffic volume. It's very, very important. Last but not the least, hacking is inevitable. Attack will happen, the systems will get compromised. We have an idea about the blast radius, we can actually control it. We can try and get an idea as soon as someone tries to get into our network or somebody tries to play around with that. I cannot trust anything, especially when we talk about logging. Logging has to be everything, logging every activity, monitoring everything, whatever is going on. Enterprise may have hundreds or even thousands of servers and applications. These require configuration, especially via APIs. They has to be monitored. And this is something I've learned like in past years, that it's perfect fit for the cloud, because we can't trust the public cloud at all. So there are many challenges in deploying infrastructure in the cloud. And one of the larger or the biggest being implementing the security. So zero trust is like a perfect fit for the cloud deployment, for an obvious reason that we can't trust the network in a public cloud. The ability that we have to authenticate and secure the communication without relying on the IP addresses or the security of the network which are connected or which are interconnected, we are monitoring everything what's happening there. And zero trust advocates that every packet can be encrypted when it's being sent across the data center operators. By eliminating these kind of special cases, we can also eliminate that human error which is always associated, where people say that human is the weakest element. So we might be able to argue that intra data center encryption is like overkill. With cloud, even the reduction in the cognitive load can happen. History has proven it otherwise, whatever we say that. So, everything can we encrypt? Yes, we can encrypt. But it's just that we need to make sure we are doing it in a proper way. There was one use case which I read somewhere, and I have given the reference in the background. So, Demonoid is like a torrent website. People go there and watch movies, download movies. So any new movie comes in, people just upload it there and use it. So Cloudflare provide access to the Demonoid as a so Cloudflare has a commitment wherein they have the data centers across the world, and they're going to be providing the services to them or any other organization. So they share the cache amongst the different data centers. So someone in the India, so one of the biggest movie person, I would say, like a director or someone got the order that this particular website should be blocked in India. So someone in India tried to access it because the person was from India, and Cloudflare data center was in Mumbai, was used for the outbound pipe. Now there was another glitch. There are certain outbound pipes which are controlled by certain providers. So that provider was controlling that outbound pipe, and they got to see that it's a Gemini traffic, and they did a blockage. Now what happened? Cloudflare is using the cache server, and that got cached to all the points, and it became a global blockage. And it was, just to give a disclaimer, it was not a problem at a Cloudflare. It was a problem at the Demonoid site, wherein the SSL was getting tripped when it went to the service provider, which case they got to know that it is the Demonoid traffic, and they blocked across. Now, can we say that zero trust is not a product but a perspective? People say it's an architecture, it's a framework, whatever you call it as. It's more the way we work with the organizations. Now, what are the concerns? Think about, right now we are all working from home, and can our data like the DR, disaster recovery sites, can operate for a few hours or even for like few days, but after that what can happen? It's been like over a month. So our lockdown started on 23rd of April, until now, no, sorry, 23rd of March. And even way before that we were at a lockdown because all the schools, everything got closed, so we had to be home. Till now we are at a shutdown, and even we're going to go beyond 3rd of May. So did the organizations think that we ever the world would be at a shutdown? I think nobody ever thought. I had my travel plans for the whole year. Like I had my itinerary made for like every month, that this month I'm going to be traveling here, this month I'm going to be traveling here. So I had the whole itinerary. Now nobody ever thought. So for MNCs, like they have the access for few people to work from home, but nobody ever thought that everyone would be working from home for any organization, for every organization. And that's why we are talking about zero trust. Zero trust plays a big role, wherein if we say that everything can't be run remotely using virtual tools, human intervention is required. But if we have zero trust in place, we know where exactly we're going to be stripping, where we're going to be disconnecting. We can control the whole infrastructure. Now, key takeaways. So one of my friends says that if we want to protect our computers or our network, we shouldn't be exposing it. And if we are exposing it, or we just have to turn it on, we shouldn't be connecting it to a proper network. So with zero trust, what can we do? We can establish and maintain a model of least privilege, utilize context to enforce that we have granular access, and authenticate and verify access to all the resources. We log, monitor, analyze all the activities, and take appropriate action. And I'll admit that zero trust is not for a faint heart. It enforces us to invite legacy infrastructure, legacy workflows, legacy process, and whatnot that have been around for like over decades. And in some cases, I would say, not for like the startups, but like for organizations like bigger organizations which have been there, it has been there for a while. The larger an organization, the more the complex the infrastructure is. And we live in a connected world where we have to collaborate not just with other employees, not just with other people, but also with customers, vendors, partners, many more. And I think, or I believe, that zero trust model makes sense in today's world, especially because of the larger number of the data breaches that have happened, or the breaches that are happening that bypass the defined corporate perimeter. So, zero trust concept, or we can say that zero trust conceptualizes to reduce the chances of breaches and strengthen our defenses mechanism wherein we want our organizations to be safe. So this is about zero trust, and this is a place where you can reach me. I'm sure you would have a lot of questions, anything. This is a place to go. You can reach me anytime on my Twitter. My DMs are open. My LinkedIn is there, and you can drop me an email as well if you want to talk about it. These are some of the references because this is something which I have been working in my organization to stitch around IAM with mobile device management, with data security, with SIM. So we've been working quite a lot on zero trust model. That's when I thought, okay, let me start exploring about it. And a lot of myths came around. So I was not sure. Like zero trust is like don't trust anyone. It's not that. It's about building the architecture, breaking down into pieces, and then securing them properly so that we don't need to have a trust on the network, but our devices in turns are secure. So thank you. Let me stop sharing.